"Mom can sit there," my son said, while pointing toward the small table beside the kitchen doors. He didn't even look at me when he said it. I had already paid for the private room, the birthday cake, and the dinner for 14 people. But somehow, I was the only person in the family without a proper seat. I was still holding my purse in my lap because nobody had bothered to make space for me. The restaurant sat right off Beale Street in Memphis, crowded and loud with birthday music and clinking glasses. My grandson Tyler was turning 16. Everybody kept saying how special the night was supposed to be. My son Greg rented the room in his name, but every dollar of it had come from my savings account 3 days earlier after he called me crying about being short this month. I should have known something was wrong the second I walked in. Nobody hugged me. Nobody asked if I needed help. Greg's wife, Shannon, barely looked up from her phone. My younger granddaughter, Ashley, was sitting in the chair that had my coat folded over it. She glanced at me and whispered, "Dad said Grandma doesn't mind." Doesn't mind. Funny how people decide what hurts you without ever asking. The little table beside the kitchen wasn't even part of the family setup. It was pushed against the wall near the swinging doors where waiters rushed in and out carrying trays. Every few seconds, hot air and the smell of grease blew across my face. I sat there quietly. Nobody moved. Nobody said, "Mama, take my seat." I watched my own family laugh together 10 feet away, while I sat alone like some extra person who wandered into the wrong party. Then came the cake. The waitress rolled it out smiling while everybody pulled out their phones. Tyler stood up for pictures. Greg wrapped an arm around Shannon. Ashley squeezed in beside them. And then Greg looked over at me. "Mom," he said, "can you scoot back a little? You're kinda in the background." I don't think I've ever felt humiliation hit me so hard in my life. I scooted my chair back beside the dirty dishes cart, while strangers sang happy birthday to a boy whose braces I paid for last spring. Nobody noticed my hands shaking. A few minutes later, the waitress brought the bill folder and set it beside Greg. That room went quiet in a way only families understand. Greg stared at the total. Shannon leaned toward him, whispering something sharp through her smile. Then he turned toward me. "Mama, you think you could help cover the alcohol too? They charged more than I expected." I just looked at him. "The alcohol? I don't even drink." My purse was still sitting unopened in my lap. I slowly wrapped both hands around it, and for the first time all night, Shannon finally looked directly at me. Not kindly, nervously, because I think she realized something in that moment. I hadn't touched my wallet once. Greg cleared his throat and kept staring at my purse like he was waiting for gravity to do the work for him. "Well?" he asked quietly. I looked around the room first. Tyler was pretending not to listen, but he was. Ashley kept staring down at her phone. Shannon folded her arms and leaned back in her chair with that irritated expression she always got when life stopped moving according to her schedule. And suddenly I saw all of them differently, not as family, as people waiting for a transaction. I opened my purse slowly. Greg relaxed immediately. I could actually see relief wash over his face. Then I took out my reading glasses instead of my wallet. The look on Shannon's face changed fast. I opened the bill folder carefully and read every line. Steak upgrades, cocktails, extra bottles of wine, add-on desserts, charges piled on top of charges. $1,426. Greg gave a nervous little laugh. "Crazy, right?" I looked up at him. "You ordered 3 bottles of 18-year bourbon." That was for the table. I wasn't sitting at the table. Nobody spoke after that. One of the waiters pushed through the kitchen doors behind me carrying dirty pans. The loud crash made Ashley jump. I closed the bill folder gently, then I slid it back toward Greg. I already paid for this party, I said. His face tightened immediately. Mom, no, listen to me. My voice stayed calm, which somehow made the room even quieter. I paid for this room, the cake, Tyler's gift. I paid your electric bill 2 weeks ago too, unless we're pretending that didn't happen. Shannon sat up straight. Nobody asked you to bring that up here. I turned toward her slowly. Nobody asked to sit me beside a garbage cart either. Her cheeks turned red instantly. Greg rubbed both hands over his face. Can we not do this tonight? Tonight? I said softly. You moved your 74-year-old mother beside the kitchen doors at a dinner I paid for. Tyler muttered, Dad? But Greg snapped first. You always do this, he said under his breath. You always make people feel guilty. That one hurt. Not because it was loud, because it was rehearsed, like he'd been saying it about me for years when I wasn't around. I stared at my son for a long moment. All I could think about was him at 12 years old, crying into my chest after his father left us in Tulsa with overdue bills and no food in the refrigerator. I worked double shifts for that boy. I sold my wedding ring for that boy, and now he looked embarrassed that I existed too loudly near his rich friends. Shannon leaned toward him. Just pay it with the Chase card. Greg whispered back, It's maxed. I heard it anyway. Of course I did. A cold feeling settled into my stomach. Because suddenly little things from the past year started connecting together. The emergency loan for Tyler's school tuition. The late mortgage payment Greg swore was temporary. Shannon asking strange questions about my retirement account last Thanksgiving. I looked directly at my son. How bad is it? His eyes flickered, and that's when I knew. This dinner wasn't about Tyler's birthday at all. It was about me opening my wallet one more time. Greg kept staring at the table after I asked him that. How bad is it? Nobody moved. The restaurant noise outside the private rooms suddenly sounded far away, muffled behind the pressure building inside my chest. Finally, Shannon answered instead of him. We're handling it. That sharp little tone again. Defensive, angry, proud. I nodded slowly. That wasn't my question. Greg leaned back in his chair and exhaled hard through his nose. Things got tight after the investment deal fell through. What investment? Neither of them answered right away, and that scared me more than yelling would have. Tyler quietly stood up. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. Smart boy. He felt the room turning ugly before the adults admitted it. The second he left, Shannon lowered her voice. We were trying not to worry you. I almost laughed at that. You asked me for $12,000 in March. That was temporary. You asked me for 8 more in June. Greg rubbed his forehead. Mom, and now you're asking me to cover a liquor bill at a restaurant where I wasn't even allowed at the family table. Shannon's jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscle twitch. Then she said the thing she probably should have kept inside her mouth. Well, maybe if you didn't hold money over everybody's head all the time. Greg turned fast. Shannon. But she was already going. No, seriously. Every time you help with something, there's this guilt attached to it. Like we owe you forever. I stared at her. Not angry. Honestly, stunned. Because this woman had cried in my kitchen 9 months earlier, saying they might lose their house. I had emptied part of my retirement savings for them, and now she was acting inconvenienced by my memory. I folded my hands over my purse carefully so they wouldn't see them shaking. "You do owe me," I said quietly. The room went dead silent. Greg looked horrified. Shannon looked furious. But I kept going. "You owe me honesty, respect, basic human decency." My throat tightened, but I forced the words out anyway. "I am not an ATM you wheel out during emergencies." Greg stood up suddenly and paced toward the wall. "Can we please not do this here?" "Where would you prefer?" I asked. "At my funeral, maybe." That hit him hard. He stopped moving. For a second, I saw the little boy again, under the gray hair starting at his temples. Then Shannon spoke again, cold this time. "If we're being honest, maybe you like needing to rescue people." I looked at her slowly. "What does that mean?" "It means maybe this is how you control everybody." I felt something inside me crack then. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, permanently. Because that woman had spent 11 years inside my family. Christmas dinners, hospital visits, Sunday lunches after church. And all that time, this was what she thought of me. A lonely old woman buying love. I stood up slowly from the tiny table by the kitchen doors. My knees hurt. My back hurt. My chest hurt, worst of all. Greg finally looked nervous. "Mama." "No," I said softly. I reached into my purse then. Both of them watched immediately, waiting, hoping. I pulled out a folded envelope instead. Greg frowned. "What's that?" I looked him directly in the eyes. "The reason I came tonight." And suddenly Shannon stopped breathing normally. Greg took one step toward me. "What envelope?" I didn't answer him right away. I just held it there in my hand while the room stayed painfully quiet around us. The paper was soft at the corners from how many times I'd almost opened it over the past 2 weeks. I had brought it tonight because something in me already knew. Not consciously, maybe, but deep down, I think I knew this dinner was never really about family. I slid the envelope across the table toward my son. His face had gone pale. Shannon reached it first. Inside were copies of bank statements, late notices, credit reports, and one document from a law office in Memphis with Greg's name typed across the top. Shannon's eyes widened instantly. Greg whispered, "Jesus Christ." I sat back down slowly. "You used my information." Neither of them spoke. "You took a loan out using my retirement account as collateral." Tyler's birthday balloons floated quietly against the wall, while my son stared at papers proving he had betrayed me. The room suddenly felt too small for breathing. Greg finally shook his head fast. "Mom, listen." "No, you listen." My voice stayed low, but every word landed hard. "The bank called me Tuesday morning because payments stopped coming in. That's how I found out." My throat burned. Do you understand how humiliating that was? Sitting in my kitchen with some 28-year-old loan officer explaining debt I never agreed to. Shannon looked terrified now. Not guilty. Terrified. That told me everything. Greg dragged both hands through his hair. "I was going to fix it." "With what money?" "We had investors lined up." "For what?" Neither answered. Then Shannon quietly said, "The restaurant." I blinked. "What?" Greg finally sat down again, like his legs gave out underneath him. "We were trying to buy a sports bar downtown," he muttered. "The deal collapsed after permits got denied." And suddenly everything made horrible sense. The missing money, the panic, the constant emergencies, They weren't drowning from bad luck. They gambled with money they didn't have, and when it failed, they used me as the safety net. I looked at my son for a very long time. You forged my signature. Greg covered his face. I was going to tell you. When? He didn't answer, because there was no good answer. Shannon finally leaned forward. We were desperate. I turned toward her slowly. Desperate enough to destroy me financially? No, but not desperate enough to give me a chair at the family table. That one hit her harder than I expected. Her eyes watered instantly. Good. I wanted her to feel at least 1 inch of the shame I'd carried all night. Greg's voice cracked then. Mama, please, we can work this out. And there it was. Not sorrow, not apology, fear. Because for the first time all evening, he realized I wasn't reaching for my wallet. I was reaching for consequences. I opened my purse one last time and pulled out my phone. Greg stood immediately. Who are you calling? I looked directly at him. My attorney. And that was the exact moment Tyler walked back into the room and heard every word. Tyler stopped in the doorway, holding his phone in one hand. He looked from Greg to me, then down at the papers spread across the table. Nobody said anything for a second. Then Tyler asked quietly, Dad, what did you do? Greg looked completely cornered now, sweat across his forehead, eyes darting everywhere except toward his son. Tyler, this isn't your business. The hell it isn't, Tyler shot back. That surprised everybody, especially Greg. Tyler looked at me then, really looked at me, sitting alone beside the kitchen doors with my coat still on my lap like some forgotten stranger. His face changed, and I watched my grandson understand everything all at once. The seating, the money, the humiliation, all of it. Grandma paid for this party? He asked. Nobody answered fast enough. Tyler's expression hardened. Seriously. Tyler, Shannon snapped, watch your tone. My tone? He laughed once, sharp and ugly. You stuck Grandma beside the kitchen like she worked here. People outside the private room started glancing in through the glass now. Greg moved toward him. Lower your voice. But Tyler stepped backward. No, you lied to everybody. His eyes were wet suddenly. You told me you bought the cake. You told me this whole night was from you. Greg looked desperate. Son, listen. You stole from Grandma? That word landed like a gunshot. Stole? Nobody could soften it after that. I slowly stood up again, my knees aching worse than before. Tyler, I said gently, you don't need to carry this. But he looked heartbroken, not angry anymore, heartbroken, because children expect strangers to disappoint them, not parents. Greg reached toward him. We were trying to fix things. You forged her signature. Keep your voice down. Why? So people won't hear what kind of person you are? Shannon suddenly stood too. Enough. We are not doing this in public. I looked at her carefully. You already did. That shut her up. My phone buzzed in my hand, my attorney returning the call. Greg saw the screen light up, and panic finally hit him for real. Not embarrassment, not guilt. Panic. He grabbed my wrist before I could answer. Mama, please. That moment changed something in me forever. Because his hand didn't feel loving. It felt afraid. Afraid of losing the house. Afraid of losing money. Afraid of consequences. But not afraid of losing me. I slowly pulled my arm away. The entire room had gone silent now, except for muffled restaurant music outside the doors. Tyler stepped beside me. Beside me. Not his father. Me. Greg saw it too. And I swear that hurt him more than the lawyer call ever could. Mama, he whispered again. I answered the phone without taking my eyes off him. Yes, I said calmly. I'm ready now. Then somewhere behind us, glass shattered. Some stories end quietly, but the damage stays with people for years. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below and subscribe for more real emotional stories like this one.